If you would like to hang out, it's time for me to bust out the Red Bull because it's late in the day. So we're going to make it through this session before I droop. And you are the few, the proud. You've made it through the entire day to advanced Dialplan routing. So this is kind of exciting. We will finish up quickly. Our last session where we were going to add voicemail, I believe, was what we were at. So just very quickly to go through voicemail, I basically need to do 4 things to add a voicemail, right? I need to create some type of mailbox. I need to send calls to that voicemail box. I need to notify the user that there's a message in the mailbox, and I need to allow the user to retrieve that message. I mean, at a basic level, this is what I want to do. So let's knock them out. Step 1, create the mailbox. I was thinking of a song that talked about step 1 in a box, but it was like super inappropriate. Moving along. Step 1, create the mailbox. You're going to do this in voicemail.conf. This syntax should look really familiar to us now. Here I have a context called default. I'll make the note that in extensions.conf, you see me using my default context, but you should not. The reason why is because when calls don't have a place to go, they can often end up in the default context. That's a bit of a security risk. So extensions.conf, do not use the sample configuration. Start from a blank extensions.conf on a production system. On extensions.conf, do not use a default context. Create a default context and then hang up on everything that goes there, right? For voicemail.conf, totally copacetic to use the sample config. It's not a security risk. Totally copacetic to use the default context. That's going to work good for you. So you can create multiple voicemail contexts. Like let's say you're doing a multi-tenant system. You've got company A and company B. Default context. So here you can see the syntax is very simple. Mailbox 7001, 9999 is the PIN code, right? The voicemail password. And then Alan Dorner, I've put that name in there. And this is actually going to get me multiple things, right? So this is not only going to get me the voicemail box that's got some text, but this is my dial by name directory. So the directory application is actually reading from the voicemail file. It's kind of nice. You configure voicemail.conf. You get directory for free. There are some other options. There's options to configure the email to go from voicemail and some other things. You can read the sample voicemail.conf file or the wiki, and that has all that documentation. Step 2, I need to send a call to that voicemail box I just created. I'm going to use the voicemail application. So here in my dial plan, here's my context called phones in extensions.conf. I go to extension 7001. I dial the phone, and I dial it for 20 seconds. When it gets to the end of that 20 seconds, it's going to fall through to the next priority. It's going to execute. Remember, execute them one at a time, right? So here, I've got a multi-line priority where it dials voicemail. So here it's calling the voicemail application. And the voicemail application says, for this mailbox, for mailbox 7001, put a call in there. So if I call, in this case, 01 Digium, the SIP here 01 Digium, and let's say that's Bob, and Bob is not there, I'll get dropped into mailbox 7001 to leave a message. So now I've left a message for Bob. Now I need to tell the phone to light up its light. In this case, I've already discussed this option earlier today, mailbox equals 7001. So 7001 is basically telling this phone to send a SIP subscribe message to poll asterisk, or I should say to subscribe to that published SIP message. So when asterisk gets a voicemail message in that box, asterisk will send a message to a SIP message to the phone and say, hey, by the way, you've got a voicemail. The phone will receive that message and turn the light on. Message waiting indication. Last step, allow the user to retrieve the message. So in this case, I'm going to use voicemail main. So the voicemail application puts a message into a mailbox. Voicemail main allows you to retrieve a message from the mailbox. And so in this case, I've got an extension, and it's extension 802. I've put it here in my phone's context, but it could be in a context called features or some other kind of place where I put kind of feature access extensions. And the idea is from this phone, I can dial 8002, and I'll get comedian mailbox. And I wish I actually had that because I miss it. I don't know. You know, I had Allison voicemail for so long. I got so used to, you know, you go check your voicemail, like comedian mail. You know why they call it comedian mail? It's a, what's that? Yeah, it's a pun off of Meridian mail. So they called theirs comedian mail because they thought they were funny. I thought they were funny. In any case, I regrettably don't get to listen to Allison as much these days because I have a visual voicemail app on my Digium phone. Although I will say voicemail used to be a great annoyance to me, and who likes checking their voicemail because you have to go through all of these options and whatever. And I love the visual voicemail app because now I just hit it and it gets displayed on my screen and I can, you know, click and fast forward and all that kind of stuff. So in any case, if you're using DPMA with Digium phones and you configure this process, you do this, all this voicemail stuff, then it just automatically works. But you can also set up an extension to dial voicemail main, and voicemail main will send you into that audio voicemail application where it's like comedian mail, mailbox, and you can change those voice prompts if you want. So if you want that to be like, welcome to Digium's voicemail service, and if you want to even have it match all of the other prompts, you can hire Allison Smith to record that initial prompt for you, and then in the same voice, it'll be everything that matches. And that's all good to go. Any questions on setting up voicemail? Okay, so yeah, so the question is, can I use the same mailbox for multiple extensions, right? So for example, if I have this phone, maybe this is Alan's phone, and maybe this is Ryan's phone, and but they both want to be able to check a shared mailbox, right? That's very simple to do. You could do message waiting indication on the same mailbox because you can set that mailbox equals line for both phones for the same mailbox. Then they'll both get message waiting indication. You can also set the voicemail main to dial a particular mailbox, and they can be set up for that same mailbox. So that's all completely possible and doable in Dialplan. Yeah.
You remember Mailbox in Subroutines. Can you use it as a channel variable and extension?
The question is, if I set mailbox in sip.conf, can I use it, or I'm sorry, yes, if I set mailbox in sip.conf, can I then use that as a variable in extensions.conf, which is brilliant. I love exactly where you're going, and I don't know, but let's find out. That's worth a tangent. So, like you guys haven't had already, you're like, oh, this guy has tangents. Okay, so let's take a look at that just very quickly. Sip.conf, I should already have a mailbox set up for Alan Dorner, 600. Let's say, oh, wouldn't you guys like to see what I can see? Hey, there we go. My bad. All right. So voicemail, show, users. OK, so here I've got my voicemail users, my voicemail box. These are all configured in voicemail.conf. Let's do this, because we can check this. Extensions.conf. We can have this IVR do same n and do dump chan. And then same n, hang up. Okay? So what this is going to do is this is going to say this is an internal phones when I dial 100. Let's just make sure I don't have another extension 100 somewhere else. I do. Let's see, that's there, that doesn't matter. That's there, that does. Let's make this 1999, like Prince. So we're going to party like it's 1999 and hit the dump chan and see what's on that channel. Dialplan reload. So what I've done is I've used this dump chan application, and what you'll do is you'll see core set verbose 3. Okay, so I've got some verbosity. So in theory, when I dial 1999 from this phone, there we go. So what it did, let's just look at this Dialplan output. So it hit Dialplan priority 1. This is how you would read your execution, your Dialplan execution, right? So here's priority 1. It called a no-op. It said this is the internal phone's context, right? Here's priority 2. It called dump chan. What dumpchan does is it says, give me all of the data on that channel. And so I haven't really talked about variables yet, but hey, we're all programmers anyway. This kind of works out. If you're not a programmer, I will explain this very shortly. But here I've got the channel name, the SIP type, unique ID. We are looking for Mailbox, which I don't see. So it appears to me that that is not an accessible from the channel information. But if you wanted it there, you can do it in Asterisk. So sip.conf, what you would do is you would do set var, and you would set this set var, and let's actually call it Mailbox. I'll call it special Mailbox variable using camel case equals 600. Okay, so I save that. I reload SIP, right, because I just changed my SIP configuration. Let's just reload the Dialplan just for fun. How about Dialplan reload? Dialplan reload. Okay, and let's call our 1999 extension again. Redial. Okay, and here we go. So now you can see that I have this variable here, special mailbox variable using camel case, and I can access that from my Dialplan. Of course, this is a crazy name because it's late in the day and I'm only halfway done with my Red Bull. But you can see now I've gotten the number. So that would be the way to get that mailbox number or the extension number. Like if I want to think of that phone as extension 600, I can get to it that way by adding a set var. And I can use set var in sip.conf. I can use it in chandati.conf. I think I can even use it in eeks.conf, but I know you can definitely do it in sip and chandati to get those kind of channel variables. That's a great question. Any other questions before we hop into this last mix here? OK, if anyone doesn't have my information, I will pop it up there quick just because I see some new faces. Please hit me up on Twitter, LinkedIn, shoot me an email. Love to connect with the Asterisk community. It's very simple. It's Billy Chia, or you can just go to billychia.com, and it lists all of the places that you can get a hold of me. Advanced Dialplan. We've made it to the end. OK, here we will discuss variables, functions, expressions, and conditional branching. So if some of the conversation has been aloof to you so far, we will get to, this is kind of like the nitty-gritty of programming. If you've never programmed before, you will have a little bit of an idea how it works. Let's talk about variables. What is a variable? If you remember back to your high school algebra class, you can remember that you used variables. And it's very much the same way in a programming language. Variable is going to be a bucket where you are going to store some information. And then I say, when I have that bucket, give me what's inside. So in this case, I have a bucket or a box, and it's called trunk. And I'm storing inside that trunk, inside that variable called trunk, a variable, a message, or I should say the data, sip/server trunk. So when I can dial this full string, sip/server trunk, or I can just use the variable. I can just say dial trunk. And when I dial trunk, and I'm dereferencing the variable, which basically means give me what's inside the variable, with a $sign and curly brackets. And so when I use $sign and curly brackets, it says give me what's inside. So the kind of idea here is that if I have a cup, whatever I put in the cup, I say give me the cup, and I get what's inside. So if the cup's got Red Bull, I get Red Bull. If the cup's got Dr. Pepper, I get Dr. Pepper. In this case, the cup has sip/server trunk. And you would say, why is this valuable? Well, imagine that you had 20 or 30 or 1,000 dial strings that dialed sip/server trunk. Now imagine that instead of calling it server trunk, it changed to server trunk 2. And now you've got 1,000 places to go updating your Dialplan, right? So even if you're not a programmer, you're not used to using variables, you can see the power of having a variable. By using trunk, all those 1,000 places in your Dialplan, now you can update it once, and it updates it everywhere, if that makes sense. I'm going to make a little more sense as we go along. So channel variables. What is a channel variable? It's a variable associated with a specific channel in Asterisk. Remember, every end-to-end call in Asterisk is going to have 2 channels, and we can have some data on that channel, which we kind of just saw. So in this case, if I dial 1000, I'm going to use the set application to set the value of a variable called number. If you guys remember, I said name your variables descriptively. So this is just going to store a number. In this case, I'm storing the number 0. Then I'm using the say number application. And the say number application, you'll hear the lovely Allison Smith say to you 0, right? Because that's the value stored inside that number. If I set this to 3, then this would be 3. If I set it to 7, this would be 7. That kind of makes sense to us. Extension 1001. Here I'm using the read application, which I described earlier. Read is going to play an audio file. In this case, it's going to be, please enter the extension of the person you'd like to reach. And then it's going to store whatever they type in. So if I type in 555, this variable will get stored in at 555. If I type in 789, this will get 789. And then it will say playback, you entered, and then it will say the number, whatever was called, right? So here is the question for you. If I dial 1001 from this phone, and it says, please enter the extension, and I dial 555. And then from, let's say this is Alan's phone, and then from Ryan's phone, at the exact same time, I call extension 1001, and I enter 777. So here I enter 555, here I enter 777. At the exact same time, what will be the value stored in number? Somebody I heard said it's a local variable. And so yes, if you think of the scope of the variable, the answer is for Alan it will be 555. For Ryan it will be 777. The scope of that variable is limited to the channel, if that makes sense, right? So on Alan's channel, on his connection to Asterisk, that's the only place that that variable has that value. So I can have 1,000 calls into Asterisk, and all 1,000 of those calls all have a variable called number, and all 1,000 of those calls can have a different value for that variable because that variable is only available on that channel, right? So it's limited to that channel. Now, keep in mind when I make an end-to-end call, like let's say I call from this phone to this phone, that's 2 channels. So this one could have a different value for the variable than this one. If you want the same value over on this phone, you can do variable inheritance. And so you could do an underscore underscore, and that'll allow you to inherit the variable across multiple channels. It's a little bit deep for today's topic, but suffice it to say, channel variables by default are limited to the channel in scope. There are some predefined variables that you just get for free in Asterisk. For example, context will always have the value of the current context. Extend, very useful variable. It will have the value of whatever the current variable is. The current priority, dial status. Some Dialplan applications set variables, right? So dial status, when you exit dial, it'll set a status like no answer or busy or unavailable. And then you can route conditionally based on that value. This slide is kind of goofy. Let me just say that it has flip-flopped back and forth. Sometimes these were the same variable, and sometimes these were different variables, depending on your version of Asterisk. I think that we finally ended up at they are now different variables. And I'll have to ping Mark about it, one of our SIP developers, because I remember having this conversation, and I said, hey, man, this is so goofy. Can we just get it to be case explicit? Can we get it to be like trunk with a capital T is different than trunk with a lowercase t? And him and I were in agreement on that, and I think he finally added that for me. So I know it's flip-flop back and forth. Case in point, the built-in variables will always be all uppercase, and so as a best practice, I recommend that you use lowercase or camel case for your variable names. Debugging variables. So you saw that I just used dumpchan. Dumpchan dumps out all the channel variables. I could also use no-op and say the value of number is, and then whatever it is. And then on the CLI, I'll see this. Hey, no-op. The value of number is, and then we can see it has that value in there. It's showing me what was actually stored in that variable. So this is very helpful to do your debugging on the CLI, because oftentimes you're routing conditionally. You're saying if the number is 4567, do one thing. If the number is 7777, do something else. And so then you call the number, and it doesn't behave the way you thought it did. So you're going to want to check the value of your variables. And you can do that very nicely with no-op them out to the CLI. That just stands for no operation. It's going to print whatever you send to it. So Dialplan functions. Any questions about variables? Pretty straightforward. Dialplan functions. Functions, this is a real misnomer. So I apologize to those who are actual programmers, because in real programming, not in Dialplan scripting, in a standard programming language, a function is what in the Dialplan we would call like a subroutine, right? That's even poor. I'm probably confusing somebody who's not into it. But anyway, a function allows you to set a piece of code that's going to have inputs, it's going to return outputs, and it's going to allow you to reuse that piece of code. That's basically what a function is in C or Java or Python, right? In Asterisk, a function is a totally different thing. It has nothing to do with what you normally think of as a function. It's completely new and separate concept. The way to think of a function in Asterisk is as a super variable. It's really a data structure. Think of it like a data structure where it's going to be able to store multiple types of data and possibly manipulate data, right? It's better if I just give you some examples. Really, it's going to get or set values. So here's the syntax. Just like a variable uses $ and curly brackets, function is going to use $, curly brackets, and it's going to have arguments. It's kind of like a variable with arguments, right? So I can do core show function and a function name. For example, the timeout function. There are 3 different types of timeouts in Asterisk. You have the interdigit timeout and the absolute timeout and the response timeout. And you can set those all, instead of those being 3 different variables, you can imagine if everything was a different variable, you'd have a bajillion variables to keep track of, right? But you can set all 3 of those variables with one function. And that one function contains that whole mix of data structure, right? So in this case, I want to no-op out the digit timeout is, and then this will give me the digit timeout because I've passed digit as the value to timeout. Or if I want to set the absolute timeout, here I'm setting the absolute timeout. So that's how I'm using the same function to get at 2 different data constructs effectively. Some functions, like the len function, extremely helpful. This kind of behaves more like a len function, like in Python or PHP, something like that. That it's typically like a method, like a string method, will give you the length of a string. That's what the len function does. So this will give me the length of extend. So this is a pattern match. This underscore x dot, that basically says match any number of any length. So it will match 1, 1, 1. It will match 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? That will match with that pattern match. So, and then I talked about the helpfulness of the extend variable. The extend variable always has the value of whatever the current extension dialed was. So in this case, if I dial 555, this value is going to be 555. And the length of it is going to be 3, right? Makes sense. If I dial 1, 2, 3, 4, this is going to hold the value 1, 2, 3, 4, and the length is going to be 4 because it's 4 characters long, right? Length variable is very helpful. Let's say you wanted to route conditionally. If I get a call and it has 7 digits long, do one thing. If it's 10 digits long, do something different. Or if I'm expecting it to be a 16-character number, or if I'm expecting an 8-digit PIN, I can check that with the len function. Very helpful. A couple more functions. Caller ID, very helpful function. There are a ton of caller IDs. I'll show this real quickly. If I do core show function caller ID, and here's a trick for you. If you type it all in lowercase, it will be like, oh, there is no function by that name. But if you tab complete, it will auto-pop it into caps for you. So if you remember that functions are always all caps, you can use the tab key to get to that. And then look at all of these options. So you put caller ID and the data type, and these are all of your different data types. There are many of them, and some of them may not even make sense to you unless you know intimately about caller ID and the various types of flavors that it can come in. But there it is, and you can research those in Google. Yeah.
If you do core show function, does it give you a list of all the available functions?
Yes, it does. So if you do That's a great question. So the question is, if I do core show function, does it give you all the functions? Actually, core show functions, plural. Core show functions, there are all of my functions, right? So that one's very nice. Just like core show applications, excellent deduction there. What else do we have? String format time. You can tell that I made this slide on a Saturday at whatever time military that is, sometime in the afternoon. And this is string format time on the shell, or in Asterisk is really the same as string format time in C. So if you just do man string format time or string for time, then you can get documentation on all these little, this is hour and this is minute and that kind of stuff. Yeah, question?
Is there a way to get P-asserted identity information for the caller ID?
OK, is there a way to get P-asserted identity? I don't know. Anyone? P-asserted identity. The question is, can I get P-asserted identity? It's in the SIP header. OK, so you can set that in sip.conf and get it that way. Awesome. Love this kind of stuff. Great job, guys. What else can we do? Math. So here I can do floating point math. So I'll show you guys expressions in a moment. Expression is going to let you, you can do mathematical calculations within an expression. But here I'm doing floating point math, where an expression typically does just integer math. Which integer math means like, no decimal points. And floating point means I get a decimal point. So in any case, expressions. So an expression is a statement that returns a value. So again, if you think back to your high school algebra class, you were already familiar with expressions. 1 plus 1 is an expression. It evaluates to 2. 2 plus 3 is an expression that evaluates to 5. Right? Those are expressions. I could have an expression like, is 1 greater than 2? That evaluates to false. Right? So that's just a statement that returns a value. It just evaluates to something. That's what an expression is. In Asterisk, this is a common programming thing. And in Asterisk, you can use expressions using $ and square brackets. So with $ and square brackets, that's an expression. Here's a variable. Here's a variable inside of an expression, right? So you can see, once you start using expressions and functions and variables, you can have like a really long line of Dialplan that has like a bunch of things encapsulated and encapsulated. It looks kind of like Lisp, right? How many parentheses do I have? So in an expression, you can use mathematical operators. You can, all the ones you're used to. This is modulus. That one's always fun. One of my favorites. You can do relational operators to do comparison. This bang equals, that means like does not equal. If this, if this caller ID does not equal my mom, then don't route it to my phone, because that's the only one who gets through. I don't know, maybe you just really like your mom or something. I'm just letting you know how to do that. Hopefully you don't live in the basement or something. Boolean operators. So you can use Boolean operators to do and or. And if you're used to programming, this all looks real familiar to you. And Dialplan borrows a lot from Bash. And so if you're familiar with Bash, this is kind of familiar to you. Let's store a value. OK, so here's a stored value example. So I have this variable. I'm calling it var2. It's not very descriptive. But I'm setting it to an expression 2 plus 3. And this expression will evaluate to the variable var2 contains. And here's my Dialplan output. So it sets var2 equal to 5, because 2 plus 3 evaluates to 5. And then here the value contains 5. Right? Here I'm setting a count to 3. And now I'm going to set that count variable equal to the previous value of count plus 1. Okay? So if you're a programmer, you're like, move on. But just for the non-programmers, really slow. Here count has a value 3. So when we get to here, count equals 3. But now I'm saying reset count to its previous value 3 plus 1. So this is incrementing a count. So I'm setting count to 4, right? So this is the idea where if I want to get to something and I want to say, do this 5 times, I can say increment the count, increment the count, increment the count. The other way you can do that is with the inc dialplan function, inc dialplan function. We'll increment the count, or you could do it this way, or you can use the dec to decrement. It does the same thing as this with a little bit of error checking. Here the variable calls count. So routing conditionally. So this kind of thing that I've kept on being alluded to. If I want to do, OK, do this thing 5 times, and then after 5 times, go do something else, right? Conditionally route. If this variable equals this value, do this thing. And if not, do this other thing, conditional branching. To do conditional branching, you can use any of the if applications or functions with an asterisk. So go to if, go sub if, exec if, the if function. All of those will use this same type of ternary operator. If you're a C programmer, you're like, ternary operator, bonus. If you're not, all that basically means is whatever this expression is, question mark. If it's true, do the true thing. If it's false, do the false thing. And true and false are the same parameters that we can pass to goto. Okay? So in the goto application, you remember earlier in the slides, we did a goto, and we just went to a priority label within the same extension. So it could just be a priority label. You could want to go to a different extension, though, in which case you pass an extension and a priority label. Or you might want to go to some other completely different context, in which case you pass a context, extension, and priority. And that's the parameters you pass to goto, same parameters you can pass to goto if. And so let's take a look at what that looks like. In this case, we're going to set a variable called test variable equals to 1. Goto if the value of test variable is greater than 2. It is not currently. It's currently the value 1. So the false is going to be monkeys. I have a weasel's dialplan label, and I have a monkey's dialplan label. And these are actually legitimate sound files in asterisk. Let's actually, just for funs, because sometimes this is vim extensions.conf. And so if I do this, and I do this, and I say playback TT weasels. Is this spelled right? Let's try this out. 1999.
Weasels have eaten our phone system.
So there you go. If the telemarketer calls and they're like, you do a telemarketer torture, then you just.
Weasels have eaten our phone system.
So you can play that one on there, or I suppose things are going crazy. Here we go. You guys know about this too. You guys know that if you're on the shell, okay, so from here I can do *-rx and I can execute commands from the shell. If I'm on the * CLI, I can use bang to get back to the shell. So I can do like this and do that from the CLI using bang. So you can go both ways. So if we do monkeys, reload. OK, that's enough of that. So yes, we put those sound files on there. So the TT stands for telemarketer torture. That's what that's for. Send them off to an IVR. In any case, what will happen is since this is false, it will go to the monkey's priority label. Here at the monkey's priority label, it will play back the audio file that you just had the benefit of partaking of. So I can omit a destination, right? So if I say is test variable greater than 2, if it's true, just fall through to the next priority. If it's false, then jump ahead to this priority label, right? So this is really nice because I don't have to explicitly state a true and a false case each time. If it's whichever one, I can do it either way. I can omit either one, but I just have to have one. So typically I do, if it's true, route to this place, and if it's false, just fall through. It just depends on what your logic is, right? This will work just fine. Now let's put it all together and see how it works. We're going to set the test variable equal to 1. Okay, this is an incrementing loop example that I've promised here for like 12 slides. At the begin priority label, I'm going to go to if test variable is greater than 2. It is not. It's currently equal to 1. Right? Here's test variable 1. So since it's false, go to monkeys. We play back TT monkeys. We now increment the count. We set test variable to its previous value plus 1. Test variable is now equal to 2, and we go to the priority label begin in the same extension, right? So here we go again. It's equal to 2. Is that greater than 2? No, it is not. So we play monkeys again, because you just didn't get enough of that. So then we set it, and we increment the count again. Now it's equal to 3. Now we go to begin. It goes to begin. Now the case is true. So now we will go to weasels, and we'll play weasels, and then we'll hang up. So you can see that is, you can use this logic in like an IVR, like 3 strikes and you're out. And that's what I've used over in my IVR. Now here's the question. What happens if I set my begin priority label at priority 1 instead of at priority 2? What would happen to my logic here? It'd go on forever and ever and ever, right? Because what happens is I set it to 1. Is it 1? Nope. Set it to 2. Set it to 1. Nope. Set it to 2. Set it to 1, right? It just goes on and on forever. So here is an improved IVR with a little bit of highlighting, and I have this. This is kind of the IVR I showed you guys earlier. So what happens here is I've set a variable called failed attempts to 0. First, I initialize that variable to a 0 value. Then at the menu beginning, I say, do we have any failed attempts? And have they had more than 2 failed attempts? If that's true, then go to this hang up Dialplan priority. If not, then just fall through and continue executing. And that's when I call back around to the main menu, and I use wait extend. Wait extend waits, and it listens for DTMF digits, and I can specify how much longer. So this is going to wait an extra 5 seconds, right? So if I go to invalid or if I go to timeout, then it increments the count and routes it back up to the top. So this is basically like a 3 strikes and you're out kind of a thing. This is what I was talking about earlier when I said, somebody will call in and the channel will get hung, or they'll just keep it off the hook forever. This way your resources aren't tied up. This is a little bit more advanced logic, kind of getting more towards a more robust IVR type of system, right? Let's do some improved voicemail, right? So earlier, when we showed the voicemail, when I dialed 7001, I had to hard code 7001 into the thing, into the mailbox, right? And actually, I'm still doing that. So I can also, actually, let me ask you this, because I have shown it to you. If I did not want to hard code 7001, what could I use here instead that I've already showed you today instead of using 7001 there? So I could, what's that? The extend variable, that's right. I could use the extend variable because I'm dialing 7001. Or I could also use that mailbox variable that I set using my set var, my goofy mailbox long variable with camel case, right? What's that? Oh, you're so correct. You would not want to use that. Man, I can't even believe I just said that. That's embarrassing. Feel free to make fun of me later on for that statement right there. Yes, that would only be available on the inbound channel. So you could use the extension, or the better way to do it is to put all of this stuff into a subroutine, which I'll show you guys before we're all done here. And in the subroutine, you can pass it as a value so that like arg1 or arg2, arg3 in that subroutine stores the mailbox number, right? So in any case, we are doing some conditional logic here. And here I'm using the if function. And the if function is checking the dial status, right? So let me show you this guy's right here. So core, show, application, dial. Now this one's huge. This is a lot of stuff. Dial is does lots of stuff. But you can see that when it exits with the status of these certain things. So it could be channel is unavailable, congested, no answer. So no answer would be like it rang for the 20 seconds and timed out. Nobody picked up the phone. Or it could be busy. Busy is like I saw the call come in, but I hit the ignore button, right? Then my SIP phone will send a message of busy. And so this way I can conditionally branch my voicemail. I can say if somebody calls in and I'm not in my office, if it goes to timeout, I can say, hey, I'm sorry, this is Billy. I'm not available right now. But if I hit ignore, I can send a different message. I could say, hey, this is Billy. I'm busy right now, but I'll be off the phone soon or whatever. Right? So I can play a different message depending on this dial status. There's also these torture ones and that kind of stuff. So the way I do that is I'm checking the dial status. Does it equal busy? If it does, return B. If it does not, return U. And I'm passing this whole expression as the second parameter to the voicemail application. Right? So the voicemail application is going to take a mailbox and then a parameter that says B or U. If it's B, it'll play the busy message. If it's U, it'll play the unavailable message. Right? So this whole expression here replaces that with either a B or a U. So in this case, I'm not routing to a Dialplan location. I'm not saying go to if. I'm just using the if function to return back a value. Right? I could have used go to if and had a bunch of more logic, but this gets it done in one line. So with that, do we have any questions on variables, functions, expressions, or conditional branching? There's a lot of ways to do that. So the question is can I store a variable, say, in a database? So for example, I don't know, account number maybe, or if I gave you my account number, could I then get a balance or something like that? The way you would do that is via an AGI or FuncODBC. So FuncODBC, we cover it in our advanced class. If you guys kind of like what you've seen, this is kind of the short commercial that Digium does have an online class that's kind of like what we went through here in a little bit more depth. It's a 6 hours of course. So if you didn't hear enough of me today speaking for 6 hours, and you want to listen to me talk for another 6 hours, you can get the online training, because that's all of my voice there. That's not a great commercial for the online training. If you want to come to the on-site training, which is really, really nice, because you get a lab machine, you get to test things out. The advanced class, it goes through database configuration. It goes through FuncODBC. We go through CDR and CEL. We go through AGI and AMI. We do all of that stuff in our advanced class. And I'll just plug that here, because for a lot of people, that's the really next best step. There's other options, though. Although I will say, if you purchase training from Digium, it does fund Asterisk, so there's a bonus there. And there's an excellent book, the Asterisk, the Definitive Guide. So once upon a time, it was called Asterisk, the Future of Telephony. And then sometime around version 3, they changed the name from the Future of Telephony to the Definitive Guide, because the future is now. And so now it is Asterisk, the Definitive Guide. And that's a great book, and that's a great resource. And that covers everything I just talked about, AGI, AMI, FuncODBC, all of that stuff. So FuncODBC, in a nutshell, lets you create a SQL query in your Dialplan. It's a little bit more complex than that, but in a nutshell, that's what it lets you do. So here's your MySQL database or Postgres, whatever you've got. And let's say you have some kind of query like select star from variable table, something like that, right? And then you're going to parse that out further. So you can actually have a Dialplan function that executes that custom DB query, and that's using FuncODBC. That's one way to do it. If you guys are interested in FuncODBC, talk to Leif Madsen. I know he's like all about it. And the other way to do it, my preferred method, is to use an AGI. And so I don't think I have an AGI example that hits a database, but I do have some AGI examples so you guys can kind of get a feel for it. So here in extensions.conf, there is an AGI application called AGI min. And this is a little bit of bonus for you guys. I don't know if Doug is still hanging out, but if you guys meet Doug Kilgore, you guys can thank him for this code, because I wrote this code for him. So he invited me to the Atlanta Asterisk Users Group, which, by the way, you can go to their booth And check out the Atlanta Asterisk users group. They have a lot of cool guys. Ben from Adhesion and a bunch of other cool guys are there at the Atlanta Asterisk users group. I think they're even having a party tonight in the Galleria at one of the restaurants, and you guys can check that out after you come to my booth and do my contest. In any case, AGI. So AGI is a mechanism by which you can go out and do an external script using any kind of scripting language you want. I believe probably with Asterisk 12, ARI, the RESTful interface, is going to be much better for you. It's going to do a similar thing, but you're going to do it over a REST interface instead of this kind of proprietary interface. But I'll show you this one to give you a little bit of feel for it. So in this idea, I'm calling an AGI, and I just say AGI, and I'm calling this script, which is a Python script, called agi.min. So that is going to be in var lib asterisk agi bin. Okay? So here I've got a little bit of text, and let me pull up agi min.py. So this is basically a minimum Python script to run an AGI. What happens when I run an AGI? Well, the first thing that happens is that Asterisk sends a bunch of data over to my script. And I have to take care of that data somehow. That data is full of basically the channel information and variables. So once I get all that information and I take care of it somehow, then I've got an open line to Asterisk to send information to Asterisk on standard in and to receive information from Asterisk on standard out, I believe. And so think of these like file descriptor 0, file descriptor 1. You can send things to file descriptor 2 for errors, if you're all familiar with that type of Unix programming language. If you're not, just think of it like read and write. You've got read and write, or printf and read to receive information and printf to send it out, right? So in this case, in Python, even if you're not a Python, I like Python because it makes sense even if you're not a programmer, or even if you're not fluent in Python, you can usually parse it out. So I'm going to import the sys library. Sys library is going to let me do file IO, or file input and output. And then I create this while loop. And I'm just basically saying, while true, go ahead and read in a line. And then when I'm done, if there's no line, then break the loop. So I know Asterisk is sending me information. So I'm saying read a line, read a line, read a line, read a line. And then when I get to nothing, Asterisk is done sending me data, break the loop. So I've not done anything with it yet. I've just read it in, right? So next thing, I'm going to send an AGI command to Asterisk. So in this case, I'm going to use the verbose asterisk AGI command. This is very similar to the verbose Dialplan application, which basically just prints something to the CLI. In this case, it's printing out AGI is fun at verbosity level 0. And then I need to flush the buffer so the script doesn't get stuck. And then I'm going to read the response from Asterisk. And I'm going to print that response out to standard error. That's a minimum AGI, right? So let me quit this. Let me go to Asterisk. And I'm also going to do this. So I'm going to do service asterisk stop. Okay? Now, the reason I'm doing service asterisk stop is because my error messages on file descriptor 2 are going to be printing to the error channel. Now, this is just like really nerdy stuff. If you're not a developer, feel free to check out now. Since there was like a ton of developer hands in the room, I'm just going to talk developer for, I don't know, the last 15 minutes or 30 minutes that I have. So the idea here is that we're just printing to standard error my error messages. And you guys saw I was going to read the response back from Asterisk. I was going to print that to standard error. Well, if I am connected to Asterisk running as a daemon, running as a service in the background, I'm not going to see those errors. The AGI file descriptor 2 errors are only going to print to the first console that Asterisk connects to when it boots. Okay? Typically, when you do like service asterisk start, you start it as a service, or whatever it is, etc init.d. Etc init.d, asterisk start. The first console is going to be on F9. So if you guys are familiar with Linux consoles, you can do like F1, F2, F3, you have all these consoles. If you go to F9, that's where Asterisk is running. And so when you do rasterisk or you do asterisk-r, that's the one it's connecting to. It's that one on F9. So if you have Asterisk already running and you want to see the error messages, you have to see them on F9. All of that seems too cumbersome, so I have just stopped Asterisk because, of course, I'm on a dev box, and I would never, ever, ever do development on a production system. Otherwise, Billy would track me down and beat me with a spoon. I don't know. I just thought of, like, the Princess Bride or something. Doesn't he want to do something with a spoon? Or maybe is that Robin Hood? I think that's the Prince of Thieves. Where did that come from? 1995. I don't even know. I know, man. It's like really late in the day, and you guys have been a fun audience. I just appreciate y'all today. My goodness. Back to some actual content that is going to be valuable for you. So let me bring it back in. So, in any case, the point is you want to connect to that initial console that Asterisk is spawning. How do we do that? Asterisk-C, as somebody had mentioned earlier. So Asterisk-C is going to start Asterisk and put it on this console. So this console is tied to Asterisk. I cannot exit from it. There is no command exit because it's not running as a service. I have to do core stop now in order to get out of that, right? If I do Asterisk-C and I exit this shell, I close Asterisk because the process is tied to this shell. That kind of all makes sense to us. And the extra bonus I get is that I'm going to see my error messages. Now, how do I dial my script? If I'm moving too fast, I hope I'm not moving too fast. I am going to want to do a channel originate. Channel originate. Channel originate. So the way the originate command works is it allows you basically to originate calls. That's exactly what it does. So rather than dialing and bridging two channels together, I'm saying create a new channel. The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to use the local pseudo channel. And so I have the local pseudo channel, and I'm going to do null at default, because that's one I've previously created. And I created this null pseudo extension that basically just waits. And I'm going to bridge that to an extension. And that extension is going to be AGI min at default. Let's actually see if that actually works. I don't know that it will, no promises, but let's check it out. Did that work? Amazing! So, wait, what did it say? Warning, they're null sent to invalid extension because there is no invalid handler. Shoot, maybe I didn't. Was there no underscore? Let me see. Dialplan show default. Let's get that. And camel case. There we go. So let's do our same thing here. That was excellent. Feel free to call it out. Bam! Look at that. Okay. So check this out. What it did is it called that Python script, and the Python read in that stuff, and then it executed that AGI command. AGI is fun, using the verbose application. And then it returned, and look, here's my result. And why am I seeing my result? Because I'm on that first console, right? The other way to do this is within your script, you could bump that like down to the syslog or something like that. But for quick and dirty, *C works well for you. Next step up. How about core stop now? And so next one up is AGI env. Okay. This is just a little bonus AGI. I don't know if anyone's talking about AGI this year. So this is just a little bonus AGI since we kind of made it through the content. And this is not normally part of the Asterisk 1, 2, 3, but you guys are developers and there's a little bit of AGI. So in this case, I'm doing some more things. So I'm importing the sys so I can do file I/O. I'm importing pretty print because I actually want to print a data structure on the console and I want it to look pretty. And so this kind of puts a little pink bow on it. I am creating a dictionary. Think of a dictionary like an associative array, right? So this is, in Python, a dictionary, right? Now look at my while loop. So while this line, I set a line equal to the value of that first read-in line, and if not break, so I read the line in, and then I say, this key and this value, I want to split it based on a colon. So I know that this data I'm getting from Asterisk. Okay, so now I'm actually going to take care and do something with that data. Before I just threw it away, now I'm actually going to use this environment data that Asterisk sends to me, right? This bucket of variables. So it's going to have like a key colon value. and I want to parse it out. And so I have the key and the value in there, and I'm going to strip the white space off. And then if there's a key, I'm going to store it in my environment associative array with the key and the value, right? This is all really straightforward for us so far. And then I'm going to write, using the pretty print format, the entire environment variable. So you're actually going to see what is it that Asterisk sends to me. So effectively what I'm doing here is Asterisk sends me a data structure of key value pairs separated by a semicolon. I'm reading them all in. I'm splitting them out into the key and the value. And then I'm putting them back into an associative array so that they'll print with a key colon value, right? So I'm basically reading them in and then spitting them out exactly as I got them, just so you guys can see what it looks like. And then I'm just going to write a carriage return, which is how AGI knows that like something's done, right? So it's basically when you get like return, I think, or actually this is just going to write to my console. It's not necessarily an AGI thing. Then I will verbose out arg1, show that to you guys here in a moment. And I'm actually pulling that value from the environment dictionary, from the environment associative array. I don't even know if associative array is right for Python, but that's the easiest way I found to describe it. It's a Python dictionary. And then flush and same kind of stuff I did last time. So let's look at the Dialplan. *C. Dialplan show AGI env at default. Okay, so here's what the Dialplan logic looks like. So first I'm going to no op. Hey, I'm executing an AGI, and I'm going to take care of this environment variables. Then I'm going to set a custom variable. This equals some custom value, right? And actually, I don't even know if that'll work because I have white space in there. It might be goofy. We'll find out. Then I'm calling this AGI, and here's the Python script. But as a second argument, I'm now passing it a value, right? So that value is going to be accessible as arg1. So if you guys remember in the script, I said, give me arg1, and it should give me a custom value. But it might give me just because I don't know how it'll handle the white space. We'll find out in just a moment. So I can do my channel originate to AGI env. And hey, look at this. So first off, here's my pretty print of the dictionary. So this is the data that Asterisk sends you over AGI, right? This is what you are reading in. So you're getting like account code is blank, and arg1 equals my custom var. Look at that. Maybe I did something else to underscore. What's that? Possibly. Yeah. So, but the arg1, yes, exactly. So the arg1 actually contains my custom var because I didn't dereference it, and I think I didn't dereference it because of white space. In any case, you guys kind of get the point of how it works despite my Cody deficiencies. In any case, what I want to show you is that this is the data that you get, and this is why I read in this line, read in this line, read in this line, read in this line, all the way until I get to 2 empty lines, right? So this is like line, carriage return, line, carriage return, line, carriage return. And then when I get to 2 carriage returns, I'm like, OK, hey, I'm done. And I print out the result. And here I have my custom var equals my custom var. We could do core stop now. We could vim etsy asterisk extensions.conf. We could go here and rather than the string my custom var, we could actually dereference this variable, see how it works for us. Asterisk dash C. What do we got? We want to do a Dialplan reload. I don't think I really need to, but we originate our call again, and let's take a look. And look at that. It actually did not choke on the white space. It's showing me, actually it did. It did choke on the white space. It choked hard. So this is telling me what was in there when it was called, and every time you call this line, it's going to show you all the variables. But when I actually went to print it out, it choked on my white space. So It is what it is. I'd have to handle that in Python, and I didn't take the time to, do that. So this is just quick and dirty. Okay. Next layer is using a framework, right? So who wants to so let me just look at this env again, right? So every single time I write, who wants to say, okay, write this specific code, and there's no error checking, and if it doesn't handle my white space well, and I didn't write the code well, in fact, I probably should leave that white space thing in there, because it illustrates the point that it's goofy to deal with, and then I have to flush every time, and which is kind of like a courtesy, but it's just like, I don't want to do this every time. I want to write my helper function once, and I want to wrap that function, and then I want to just be able to access that. And what better way to do that than to just use a library that somebody else wrote for me? There are lots of libraries. I personally like one called Pyst. So here I'm importing the file IO. Here I'm importing Pyst, which is in the module. It is called Asterisk AGI that I downloaded off of like SourceForge, I think it was on. And in any case, look at this. Look at all this magic I can do in like 4 or 5 lines of code. Now, I'm saying AGI equals this method. So here I'm taking my object that I've imported, my asterisk AGI object, and I'm calling this AGI function that basically just initializes everything. What this does is it says read in all those variables, deal with them, stick them in the places they need to go, and then create this object that you can then call all of these other methods on, right? So then, here I say my custom var is equal to, and I'm using my AGI object, and I'm using this get variable method, right? So this is so much simpler. I'm just saying, give me the variable, my custom var, right? And I have all of this error checking. I have all of this nice stuff. It's all part of the framework. I didn't have to deal with it, right? Very nice and quick and dirty. And then I can use say alpha, and here I'm basically like stripping the white space. And I'm going to say whatever the number is, right? Save that, and then asterisk -c, then Dialplan show. This one's called AGI Pyst at default, I believe. So this one is going to no op out. This one is going to set the value to a custom value and then call the AGI. So notice this time, I don't pass it in as that arg1, right? I'm not passing it in here when I call the AGI. Instead, I'm just setting the value on the channel, and then I can get to that channel data, right? So instead of reading it in with my initial environment, I can just say, hey, get me this channel variable, which you saw I used the get variable function, and that was like a wrapper around the AGI command, that get variable AGI command. I'm actually really impressed. I've given this talk before in other venues, and it was like total, nobody knew what I was talking about, and you guys are pretty much hanging right solid, so I really have enjoyed this crowd today. It's nice. So in any case, here we go. So when I call it, that was the last one. Let's do this one with Pyst, P-Y-S-T, AGI Pyst, I think. Yes. All right, look at this. So you can see it did a bunch of stuff. With just my 5 lines of code, it printed out some stuff for me, and it did a bunch of error things. And there it is playing out the letters. It is saying it letter by letter, my message, because I use the say alpha command, right, to play all that stuff out. So the point is when you're doing AGI stuff, it really benefits you to either to use a framework. There's lots of them out there, PHP AGI. There's some for Java, although let me give this caveat, just don't use Java with AGI. If you really, really want to use Java with AGI, then talk to me about fast AGI. But think of it this way, right? So a few caveats on AGI. Now that you guys kind of understand the technical how it works, right? A few caveats on AGI. AGI, as you can see, the way I've called it is it blocks. It's very channel-centric. I have to call it from an inbound call, right? And as you can imagine, every time I dial that extension, I'm spinning up a Python interpreter, right? Just think about that for a moment. So every single time this extension is executed, it goes out to the AGI, it spins up a Python interpreter, right? So if you can imagine, if I have 200 calls, I have 200 Python interpreters. Imagine all the resources that's taking. If I'm using a Java AGI, that would be 200 Java virtual machines. You probably won't even get, after 150, you'll crash your system, right, with your 16 cores and whatever. So this is kind of why I say don't use AGI. There is hope, though, for the AGI, and the answer is to use fast AGI, and I'll show you guys that in a moment. If you guys want to hang out, I mean, if you want to leave, you feel free to, but I'm here for another 10 minutes before I go over there. In any case, the point is, some of these limitations are now going to be so much better with ARI, right? So AGI will still be around. It's fast, it's quick and dirty, it's great for custom, or it's rapid development. You can see I can do some nice things, and I can go out to the AGI. And I think the original question that spawned all of this last 20 minutes of talk was hitting a database. Could I get a value out of a database? And so you can see now that I'm using a programmatic interface in Python, and Python has all of my beautiful database tools, everything I want, or PHP, Perl, whatever your language of choice is. So I would personally rather use my language of choice and the database tools that are accessible to me and use that out in AGI and query the database and get everything I want and then return those values back to Asterisk and then continue processing in the Dialplan. That's the way I would do it. Although you certainly could do the SQL queries right from the Dialplan using FuncODBC. Your choice. The concept of fast AGI. Let me see if I have in here my fast AGI. Vim fast AGI min.py. Okay. So this one's a little bit trickier, and let's see, I can't even remember if this will all work, but we'll try it out. Nothing like a live demo. So here I'm importing a socket library, and this is not going to do file I/O. This is going to do network I/O, right? So the socket is going to let me do Python I/O over a network socket. So I create a new socket there. I'm going to bind it to localhost to 4573. And 4573 is kind of this default port that I've chosen for AGI, although you can certainly use whatever port you want. And I'm going to listen on that socket. So while that's true, the code looks real familiar, right? So I'm just stripping out a line. I'm doing a little bit differently because I'm using this connection received instead of the sys I/O. I'm using the socket I/O, right? And it's all doing the same thing. And here I send a verbose AGI is fun. It's the same script as my AGI min, but this one's using fast AGI. Okay? What's the difference between the AGI min and the fast AGI? The difference is that this one, I run min.py like that. So now I run the script. I've opened up that network socket. That script is now listening on that network socket. So in another shell, I'll SSH to my asterisk box. And for some reason, my VM sometimes gets a little sticky widget with stuff. Move SSH. So the concept here is that service is running. It's kind of like listening on that port. So the idea is if I have 200 calls and they all hit that AGI, I only have one Python interpreter that's spun up, right? So here if I do *C, if I do Dialplan show default, do I even have, what's that? Is it just fast AGI? Hey, fast AGI, awesome. So if I do channel originate to fast AGI, actually let's do this first. Let's do just Dialplan show fast AGI at default. And so here I'm no opping out. I'm setting that channel variable. And then look at the syntax here, right? So instead of going out to the local file system to execute the script, instead it's going to a network socket expecting that there's a service running there and then execute the script at the network socket. In this case, it doesn't even need to be on a separate box. I'm running it at localhost. And this is a really good design principle, and you'll see why here. So when I go to execute it, fast AGI, bam, I get the same behavior, but and then here on my script that's running, I see my debug output, and the difference is if I execute 200 calls at this AGI, I only have one Python interpreter running, right? I have that one script running versus spinning up 200 interpreters. So you can kind of see the design principle, the value of using that fast AGI. All of this is kind of like in Asterisk today, and you can certainly use AGIs with Asterisk 12, but a lot of this starts to get a whole lot nicer when you use ARI, right? So I would encourage you to attend the talks, to check out ARI. You can do a lot of the same types of programmatic things, only more powerful. You get access to more stuff. So you can certainly go out, hit a script, query a database, get your values, return it to Asterisk, but you can do even more. Control channels, all kinds of good stuff. So with that, I think we're pretty close to the end. We have a question.
When's ARI available?
ARI is available in Asterisk Alpha today. So Asterisk is in an alpha version now. Beta version will be out very soon. And then, obviously, we'll have the full version of Asterisk 12. The caveat to Asterisk 12 is that it is a standard release, right? So it's only supported for 2 years, really only a year, and then a year of just bug fixes and security patches only, right? So the point of a standard release, of an Asterisk 12 standard release, is let's get in a bunch of new features. It's not really the one that you want to build your phone system on. It's the one that you want to try out the new stuff so that you're ready when Asterisk 13 comes out. So what you can do is if you're building your external stuff on ARI against the Asterisk 12 specification, next year when Asterisk 13 comes out, your app is going to be ready to rock. I mean, it's going to need very minimal updates, and Asterisk 13 will also have ARI. But Asterisk 13 will be the long-term support release that you will want to use in production. You could use Asterisk 12 in production as long as you understand, well, first of all, don't use it now because it's not released yet. Once it's released and we feel confident we have got a nice stable release, you could use it in production understanding that it's only supported for a year. You know you're going to have to upgrade within a year. That's it. So any other questions?
When you use AGI, just regular AGI, once the script is done running, if you're doing other things in that phone call, does that Python interpreter still stay up for that call, or does the Python interpreter spin down on its own?
Right. Well, depending on how you run your script. But yeah, I exit my script at the end. So the script closes, it returns to the Dialplan execution.
Gotcha. So then that Python interpreter is shut down, right?
Right. Something to keep in mind, though, it's a bit of a trade-off or a balance. I really, really can't recommend enough doing fast AGI. But like let's say I want to get a value and return that, then do some other stuff, then get a value, then return that, then do some stuff, then get a value. In the same call, I've just like spun up and torn down 3 interpreters, and that can have its own cost, right? It may be better to just leave that running. It's like a trade-off. You kind of, yeah.
You're saying depending on the Python code, you would exit out and stop so you can leave it running.
All that kind of stuff is at hand. So yeah.
Would you still recommend AGI and fast AGI versus Go?
I'm sorry. Can you?
Would you still recommend AGI and fast AGI versus Go?
Versus curl. Okay, so the question is, would I recommend AGI and fast AGI versus curl? And I would, because you get some extra features. So in the and I'm guessing that you are referring to func curl within the Asterisk Dialplan. So func curl, it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen the other, although you get a little bit extra at AGI. So what func curl will do is just imagine like you're doing a curl, like the curl Linux or Unix-based application to do out to socket-based communications with curl, and you can go and get stuff over HTTP. From the Dialplan, you can execute a curl command, so then you can go out to wherever you want and send parameters and receive them and all that kind of stuff. The difference with the AGI is it maintains that open connection between the script and Asterisk, so you can pass data back and forth And it has built-in commands. So if that's kind of your preference is to use func curl and it works for you, I'd go for it. It's probably a better performance. Right. I would definitely it's just it's a different mechanism. So with the curl, you probably would have to pass a bunch of parameters in. With AGI, by default, you get all the channel data, but you could pass that in no problem. Yeah. Are you using a func curl with some Dialplan stuff now?
Yeah, it's much easier for the developers to just create web services they're used to that. It's much easier to test. You should put command line code or anything else like that. Just have a web service instead of coming up with something that creates a connection.
Completely agree. And this is, so just to repeat that, I don't know if the camera is still even rolling, but it's so much easier for a developer to create a web service because, as most of us probably are web developers, or that might be even a core competency, and there's a lot of web developers. So you're used to creating services. You're used to working with RESTful interfaces. It's very easy to run curl commands on the command line to do rapid testing. All of that makes it nice and easy, which I think you will really, really like the Asterisk RESTful interface because it all just kind of lives in that world. But yeah, I would say if func curl does it for you in the Dialplan, call it good. So other questions? Yeah. OK. So the question is, hey, even though there's a bunch of libraries, are there preferred libraries? And the answer is today, no, not for AGI and AMI. There is StarPy that I would say is the best thing you're going to get to Digium Preferred. The problem with StarPy is that StarPy is a wrapper. It's a Python wrapper on the Twisted framework. And if you've ever used Twisted, that is like a really apt name for very twisted, very gnarly and hard to wrangle. It's super asynchronous. It runs on an event loop, and there's a lot of stuff you need to know about Twisted to use StarPy, right? So that is actually on the Digium GitHub. We use StarPy in our test suite. So that's one that's kept up on and is continually developed. And so when we go to the new AMI and Asterisk 12, that's one that'll get some love on other frameworks that are AMI frameworks. It's up to that developer. Are they going to update it with the new stuff? So that's one, but it's one that requires some stuff to learn to use. So the cool thing about ARI, again, it's kind of like the answer to every question. ARI, it saves the world. But probably not. It's kind of like everything else. There's some good things and bad things. ARI is going to be nice, and I'm excited about it. But here on the GitHub, this is the Digium GitHub. This is the Asterisk GitHub. So on github.com/asterisk, these are the Asterisk REST libraries that are the official Digium libraries. So with AGI and with AMI, you have StarPy, and that's about it. So there's a lot of other stuff out there. It's great. You can absolutely rely on it in production. You're just dependent on fixing it yourself or the developers or whatever. And the reality is AGI doesn't change a whole lot, right? So there's not a lot to patch or whatnot. But with ARI, there's actually a client library generator kind of thing, and there's some new things rolling out. But I think you will see a Python library that is this is the Digium sponsored, or we want to keep up with this Python library. And you should see some more, as I know. There are guys I've talked to that said, hey, I want to write the PHP library for REST. Great. No people will use that. Hey, I want to write the JavaScript library. Great. And so we're going to try to have those on the GitHub so that they're like, hey, these are the ones that you can use with the RESTful interface. That's a great question. Question over here?
So we use the fast AGI, and usually our extension.com is one line,
Mm-hmm.
3 lines or something. So it lasts, that AGI, that fast AGI lasts for the length of the call, basically. And so it comes over, and then we'll call so that it plays something, and then we prompt for a value, and get a value, and go back and forth. Is the REST interface going to be more like that, or is it going to be more like using curl where each,
Y-
just do something?
No, much. So the question is the new RESTful interface, is it closer to AGI or is it closer to func curl? And the answer is it's much closer to AGI. You send it, I think today it might be called the stasis application, and I don't know if that will continue to be the ARI application. But basically, the same way you call AGI, you go into your Dialplan, you execute stasis, and that sends it out to ARI. And then, yeah, you've just got this open socket, and you pass things back and forth, just like we do just like you do AGI development today. Very similar, but instead of using this proprietary AGI protocol, you're doing it over HTTP, right? And with really nice commands, not ambiguous ones. Lots of just niceties there. It's asynchronous, whereas AGI blocks, right? So all of these AGI commands, you execute a command, it blocks. ARI, it's asynchronous. Send it off, give me a call back, right, when you're done. So a lot of niceties there. So, well, cool. It is almost about time to go over and check out our thing. I think they have a little kind of reception here today. Like I said, you guys have been fabulous. I love you so much. Thank you.